Hi, how are you? I thought that I'd talk to you about school shootings and how I try to get in terms with them. The latest school shooting was just a few weeks ago. I remember that my son sent me a message and that Mom, I'm okay, but there has been a school shooting. There was a 12-year-old shooter that had killed one and injured two. And these are always very hard to grasp or understand what is it about, because both the shooter and the victims are children. In this case, 12-year-olds. But of course, there has been many school shootings where the children have been older, and then things gradually evolve to something else. But when we talk about 12-year-olds, they are really children still. Of course, small percentage of people are psychopaths, and they do not just emerge from the thin air when we are adults or when people get adults. They are born in some families and raised in a certain environment in bad conditions. They became full-blown psychopaths that can kill another person or people without remorse. So some of these school shootings can be those children that are evolving to be psychopaths, that have these kind of psychopathic traits, as the therapists say. But I don't think that all are. And it's a kind of contradictory, because in most cases there is talk about bullying. And if somebody is a psychopath, they usually don't get bullied because they are the one that bully, and they are the one that are the worst, like in behavioral wise. But if somebody is bullied and sees this as his last resort, we have to wonder what's happening to our society. Like I told you in a previous video, that where I was brought up, there was more guns in the town than people, but there was no school shootings. So what has changed from then to now? I can only ask. Of course, there was bullying back then, but it was always also allowed to retaliate. If somebody was bullying you, if you hit them back, you weren't punished. Teachers didn't see the bullying or didn't want to see the bullying, but they didn't see the hit back either. And that was actually something that was encouraged about. Don't be a telltale, get even. And that's from the parents' mouth and the teacher's mouth. But that was some kind of a, I don't know, more right order in the world, because you are among your peers and you get to resolve the things among yourselves. It wasn't nice, and it shouldn't be like that, but it was like that. But nowadays there is this politics that there is no bullying, that there is a zero tolerance for bullying. But does it actually work? No. Children still bully, but if you get even, then you get picked up and accused of bullying the one that bullied you. Or there is this kind of joint session that everybody is asked, the bullies and the bullied and their parents, and then the children are humiliated in front of everybody. I have some experience of this, and I know that I'm not going to tell teacher anything anymore. That I will personally go to the other one's parents and tell them to have some discipline over their kids. But of course, these are phenomena of the society, not just the private persons. And the one thing that has really changed in the last 40 years is place and lack of values. I started to think about it when I discussed with my son about this. And actually, the generation of my grandmother, who was born in the beginning of 1900s, was the last generation that was really religious. So they went to church and they respected the minister, and there was certain order in the world. And they all believed, or most of them believed. But their children, the generation of my mother, that were born during the Second World War, they weren't anything like actively religious. Some of them were, but not all. So they became the Great Liberation of the 70s and 60s. And then we are their children. We are the generation that was born in 70s. And we didn't have religious parents anymore. So the basic values didn't come to us. So if my grandmother had these Christian values, like very bold, and my mother didn't, she did follow them, or her generation, but they weren't religious anymore. They didn't believe it, like in their heart and soul anymore. And then my generation grew up without this guidance and without these like values explained and lived by. We just had of course I grew up in a rather religious environment, but if I think about these people that I'm surrounded now, they didn't grow up like that. Their parents didn't believe, and some of my generation are like proud to say that they are atheists and they don't believe. And they don't believe in these Christian values. So what comes to our children, to that generation? They do not have Christian upbringing, or maybe some, but they do not have the same values. It's not in their heads like crystal clear that you shall not kill. And if you kill, there will be a punishment from God. So it's not just something that do you think is right or wrong, but you have to fear God and His anger. And I think that that's like the main point. People of my generation that was born in 70s have this great notion that we don't have any limits and we don't have any values, but we still have some from the previous generations. But if you bring up your children without values and without limitations, and that they can do everything, and these like values and limitations are for vain, and they are for stupid people who believe, what happens? They only fear maybe a jail sentence, police, maybe somebody getting even, but they do not fear God. And it's not very hard to think what is the difference. You can escape the police. Of course, if you have a little bit of grandiosity, then you fight yourself off from the police and break out of jail and do everything like that. But if you would believe, or if you just would have this slight motion in your head that what if God is watching me and I have His hatred upon me, what will happen? That I cannot escape. So what is to do? The only thing that we can do is try to take care of the people that are closest to us, that are around us, and support our children with thinking about these values. If you are religious, if you believe in God, it's easy, and you can say that these are the God's rules that we have to live by. If you don't believe in God, you can think that these are good rules to be followed in society so we can live with one another with peace. And that's why these have to be obeyed. And I will obey them, and I suggest that you will too. Fear of God is powerful, but if you cannot believe that, then believe the power of the people and the goodness of people, that we are not supposed to kill each other, that we are not supposed to do certain things, and that's just against humanity if that is what you believe in. And that's the only thing that we can do to prevent this kind of things happening. Because if there is let's say 30 pupils in a class, if 20 of them have some kind of a notion about God, about eternal life, or God's punishment, or God's hatred, then the 10 will follow. Even if they never mention it, they behave it out. And then everybody is on board with the same values. And that's the only way out I see in this. Of course, there is much to be hoped from the teachers, and that there would be more teachers that really are put their heart and soul to their work. I know it's hard year after year and decade after decade. But if we have this kind of teachers in our schools, they really care, they really see what's happening, and they really pay attention. Because it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. One young person is saved if there is just one adult that him or her can count on. And everybody should have that one. That if they go to that one person with their worries, whether it's children or teacher or grandmother or grandfather or uncle or anyone, then just listen and be that one person that the child or young person trusts. And that is what you can do. Because these school shootings and the children that die in them, they are all in vain. That shouldn't happen. People shouldn't be put in that kind of place that they have to get a gun and shoot. Because there is no alternative. There is no way out. But I really hope and pray that people wake up with this problem that we have and start to think not only about themselves, but the people around them, about the whole society, and why we should come together with this kind of things, and why we should come together before something dreadful happens. Prevention is the only logical thing in this kind of situations. You cannot punishing the one that took the gun and shoot. It's not going to resolve anything. Or in those cases that he or she is a psychopath, it does, yes. But in the rest of the cases, it's all in vain. Those children go to juvenile criminal system, or they come to social services, dependent on the age. And their life is ruined. And their parents' life is ruined. Because after social services get through those families, there is nothing left. They are bound to find the guilty one. And the guilty is often the mother, or they think it's the mother. And that's a very heavy burden to lay upon one person when the whole society is somehow screaming that we have to have liberty and there is no God and there is no values and it's only for stupid. But if we think about the school shootings, we are not that stupid. hope that we can have a long pause before the next shooting. And I hope that all the children that come to this kind of a desperate situations and are put to a corner, get help. And if you can, be that help. I hope you have a great day after this, like a gruesome topic. I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.